Good morning to everybody. I speak to you as a lawyer engaged in human rights practice in both Jamaica and the United Kingdom. I have come to understand over many years of identification with people's struggles that there is an essential interconnection between the internal struggles of peoples who suffer oppression and the external solidarity which comes from those in other places who speak and act against that oppression. We have to be connected if justice is to prevail. We are ourselves diminished if others are humiliated. It is a concept called Ubuntu in South Africa, and it is embodied, I feel it here in this room, with our members coming from many continents to share with a European audience our sense of outrage against the oppression of Palestinians by the State of Israel. And in this work of solidarity, a non-official tribunal has often been convened in order to give a voice to those whose voice is not heard. Bertrand Russell, whose name we honor in the name of this tribunal, was the English philosopher and activist who had the moral authority and the genius to convene the first Russell Tribunal on war crimes in Vietnam in 1966, when he was 94 years old, and when the anti-war movement was just beginning. It had no power, but its influence was huge, and its authority derived from its dedication to truth and justice, and from the integrity of its members, just as the authority of this tribunal. Look at the integrity that you see displayed in front of you. I feel humbled by it, to be part of it. This tribunal concerns the most critical, unresolved situation of injustice on our planet. Sometimes it seems impossible of resolution, and yet I am very optimistic. Think of what has been achieved, the changes achieved in my lifetime, and indeed I think the lifetime of many in this room. Too many perhaps. You know, we have to mobilize the young, as Stefan did with his books, also published in his 90s. We have seen the ending of apartheid. We have seen the ending of colonial rule in Africa. We have seen the fall of fascism in Latin America and indeed in many parts of Europe. We have seen the Berlin Wall pulled down. And these momentous changes happened because of the struggle and sacrifice of the peoples directly involved, aided by the solidarity of ordinary people and their organizations around the world. I am here because I am confident that the oppression of the Palestinian people will likewise be ended. A luta continua. The London session of the tribunal was especially relevant to this theme of international solidarity. It was about the complicity of private corporations in Israel's violations of international law. We were hearing evidence about companies, some of them are familiar names, operating in our own countries and connected to Israel through a web of affiliates and subsidiaries. Private corporations are deeply involved in the three main areas in which international law has been violated: the building of the settlements in Jerusalem and the West Bank, the construction of the separation wall on the West Bank on Palestinian territory, and the incursion of Israeli forces into Gaza in the Operation Cast Lead, inflicting horrendous damage in December 2008 into January 2009. By way of example, and these are just examples, the British-Danish giant G4S, through its Israeli subsidiary G4S Israel, is responsible for the security operations in the military checkpoints at the wall, in the settlements and in the prisons. The very symbols of oppression are being organized by this British-Danish company. The United States company Caterpillar has supplied the Israeli army with the bulldozers which have demolished Palestinian houses and cleared land for the construction of the wall. The French transport company Veolia built and operated the light rail project in occupied Jerusalem. Significantly, the tribunal wrote to all these companies, and Veolia replied, informing us that it had decided to divest its interest in that project. The Irish cement company CRH holds a quarter share in the Israeli company which supplies most of the cement actually used to build the wall and the settlements. The Belgian financial institution Dexia finances Israeli settlements in the West Bank via its Israeli subsidiary. The Dutch company Rewal Holding Group supplied the cranes which were essential for the construction of the wall. We heard evidence about all these companies. And in the full London report, I urge you to study the list and to go to the website Who Profits from the Occupation and see which of the companies operating in your area are complicit. And we also focused on the responsibility of Israeli companies who have a penetration in Europe. Elbit Systems has been awarded defense contracts to supply drones to the UK and other countries. Ahava, the cosmetics company, uses mud which it has pulled from the illegal settlements on the West Bank. There are other Israeli companies. They're all in the list. Study them. And the tribunal in London focused on the legal responsibility of these and other corporations. It found that these corporations are accomplices in violating international law. In legal terms, they aid and abet the State of Israel, in particular through the construction and maintenance of the wall and its associated regime, which the International Court of Justice, in its advisory opinion, has declared to be illegal. The tribunal concluded further that the establishment of Israeli settlements in the occupied territories to be a war crime in which the corporations were complicit. The tribunal considered various judicial remedies that could be sought in the courts of France, United Kingdom, United States, and elsewhere. It noted that corporations which had assisted Israel in the violation of international law could face action under both civil and criminal law. And any lawyers amongst you, look at the full analysis. I'm not going to go into it now. Look at it, talk about it, and take action. Already in the Netherlands, the Rewal Holding Group, whose cranes were used in the wall, is under investigation by the Dutch prosecutor following a raid on its offices. And the report of the London session ended with a call to individuals, groups, and organizations to take all necessary measures to secure compliance with international human rights and humanitarian law standards, in particular through boycotts, shareholder actions, and divestment by pension funds and others. The Tribunal welcomes the recent call by the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the occupied territories, Professor Richard Falk. He called for a boycott as a Special Rapporteur of the UN of companies which make profits from the illegal Israeli settlements. You see, this is a situation in which we can all be involved. I will remember in the late 60s speaking to students at Sussex University about Barclays Bank and its involvement with the South African apartheid regime. And the Barclays Bank representative was there to argue the case with me. He was horrified by the reaction of the students unanimously supporting the call to boycott Barclays, the very bank that wanted to build student accounts for future tycoons and executives and professionals. And that led to a wider boycott. It was joined by other boycotts here in Europe and the United States and around the world, which ended in the sanctions campaign against South Africa. You see, these are things which we can do as protesters, as shareholders, and as consumers. Boycott, disinvestment, and sanctions, BDS. Change will not come about by lobbying national governments alone, although that is important. It will come about more surely when the actions of ordinary people make it unprofitable for all corporate players to do business with Israel. The boycott, divestment, and sanctions are powerful weapons in this struggle, as the anti-apartheid campaign demonstrated. And these comparisons we make with the anti-apartheid campaign are apt, not just because some of the methods used by the protest movement are similar, but because the occupation itself, the illegal occupation, as Ronnie Casriels will be telling you in the Cape Town session is apartheid, has been characterized as a crime of apartheid, and therefore we must respond in the same way. The tribunal has given you the knowledge. Read it. Read its reports. It has the knowledge of the relevant international law. It gives you the knowledge of the ways in which Israel has violated that law, and knowledge of the acts of complicity of corporations which may be based in your country. It is for you to gather that knowledge, carry on the torch to a certain victory. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.